If you love movies and movie discussions, you've come to the right place. Who am I, you ask? I am the Wiz. I'm here today with...
Zero.
How you doing this week?
Doing all right. I'm all right. Thankfully, my boss was able to have me help out on another project because my current project is, unfortunately, in a standstill.
Oh, God, that's sensible. Well, hopefully it gets unstuck at a certain point this coming week. So, all right, Zero. So we are here to review the 1974 comedy film Young Frankenstein, starring Gene Wilder, Terry Garr, Peter Boyle, and Madeline Kahn, directed by Mel Brooks. Basically, this movie is about Dr. Frederick Frankenstein, played by Gene Wilder, who learns that he has inherited his infamous grandfather's estate in Transylvania. Arriving at the castle, Dr. Frankenstein soon begins to recreate his grandfather's experiments with the help of servants Igor, played by Marty Feldman, Inga, played by Terry Garr, and the fearsome Frau Blücher, played by Cloris Leachman. After he creates his own monster, played by Peter Doyle, new complications ensue with the arrival of the doctor's fiancée Elizabeth, played by Madeline Kahn. Zero, why don't we get started on your thoughts on this movie?
This one was just plain out entertaining, but I mean, that's just kind of Mel Brooks' thing. Just, he makes fairly entertaining comedies and everything, but this one is a bit on the unique side where it kind of tries to blend a little bit of like the horror element, but in my opinion, it is by no means scary. If you're someone who's concerned that it's considered comedy horror and maybe a bit squeamish, I don't think that this is going to be that bad.
Yeah, that's right, sir. It's not really a scary movie at all, but what I did appreciate from the film is that it actually keeps the mood of the films it's lampooning really well. Remember movies like, you're a fan of The Naked Gun, correct?
Yeah.
And Hot Shots and stuff like that. They try to make it so silly that it's really hard to take the film very seriously. The film is a goofy movie. It doesn't take itself that seriously, but it takes the subject matter of what it's doing very seriously, and it mirrors those films that it's lampooning incredibly well. A lot of it reminds me of gothic films from like the 40s and 50s, like Alfred Hitchcock movies.
I like that with this movie. There is comedy in it, but it's like you said, they don't really get overly hammy with it, that it kind of makes you completely forget the original work that it's supposed to be based on. This one is obviously just a hilarious comedy version of the story of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, but at the same time, it doesn't go completely over the top with the hammy comedy stuff that you just forget, oh, this is totally just a comedic satire version of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
The comedy in this film, I think, really picks up when the monster is on screen. In the first half, the film is without the monster. It's with Dr. Frankenstein and Inga and Igor. It's good, but I think that the comedy really picks up once Peter Boyle's on screen. And I think that's because his performance as the monster is actually really good in this movie. Did you think that the comedy was just consistent all around, or was it better in different spots?
It started off a little bit on the slow side. There were a couple jokes with Inga and Igor just kind of tossing their lines in. During the start, I was like, okay, this is all right. And then once you get to the whole, like, putting the monster together and then the monster finally coming to life and then being involved a little bit more, that's when things just absolutely rocketed off and got really silly. But it was still just a lot of fun.
I will say this, though, man. What I was surprised by in the film is that I really liked Igor, I liked Inga, I liked the monster, I liked a bunch of the side characters. But I was surprised how low-key Gene Wilder's character is in this, and how he is in this film. He's just pretty much a straight man throughout the entire film. He has a couple of funny lines, but he's, I guess, the serious character in this movie.
He definitely comes off as the most serious character of the entire cast. Terry Garr as Inga was just absolutely lovely and hilarious, and holy cow, she was pretty in this movie.
Oh, yeah. Her comedy was actually very good in this, too. Just how that character was and everything, I actually really enjoyed her on that as well. Honestly, until the monster came into play, I actually really liked Igor. I thought he was really funny. So, like, I think the first half is like Igor. I thought he was just funny. And then when the monster came, like, that was the movie for me. That was, like, the funniest part. Especially with the blind man. Like the blind man scene with Gene Hackman playing the blind man was just really funny.
Yeah, that was by far one of the funnier skits in the movie. I was just like, oh my god, this is just peak slapstick right here.
All right, Zero. So here is the footnote that I have for Young Frankenstein, and I guess it's just a question I have. What's your favorite Brooks film?
Oh god, I think Dracula Dead and Loving It was my favorite.
Okay.
Never got around to Young Frankenstein, but oh man, Young Frankenstein puts up some pretty hard competition.
Honestly, I'm partial to Blazing Saddles. I think Blazing Saddles is probably his funniest film. Even though critically it didn't do so well, I like Robin Hood Men in Tights. Spaceballs is another one that's really good. And The Producers. I think top 3 is probably going to be Blazing Saddles, Spaceballs, The Producers, and then I think 4th goes into Young Frankenstein. All right, Zero, so do you recommend Young Frankenstein?
Yeah, it's an absolute hoot. It's funny, it's silly, it isn't overly scary even though it's classified as a comedy horror movie. It has a base that's rooted in Mary Shelley's novel Frankenstein, but at the same time, it just absolutely has fun with just being a comedy and everything.
Yeah.
The performances throughout the movie are just great. It gets a little bit overly silly towards the end, but I mean, I guess you gotta kind of end on a high note, so I can kind of understand just the comedy sort of ramping up harder and harder by the end.
I also recommend the film. Again, I'm not as enamored with it as most are, but I appreciate a lot of the things that it's doing. I agree with the performances, but I think Peter Boyle, Terry Garr, and Marty Feldman are probably the better performances of the film. I'm just a little surprised I didn't find Gene Wilder as funny in this as I was expecting, but he's not bad in it either. The comedy, I think, is very good in this. Overall, Zero, do you recommend Young Frankenstein?
Yes, I do recommend it.
All right, I also recommend Young Frankenstein. Now, if you want my full review on this movie, you can go to my website at IamTheWiz.com. You'll have my full written review right on the site, along with a link to the video that has this review that you've just listened to. Thank you for listening to this review. If you want to know what we're reviewing in the next couple of days, you can look on the screen right now to see what's coming up next. If you like what you heard, go ahead and leave a like on this video. If you want to discuss your opinion on the film or the review itself, please leave a comment. And if you want to hear more, subscribe to the channel. Thank you again for listening. I will talk to you next time.